Hello, listeners. It's Gunter Swoboda here with some exciting news. We're on the lookout for sponsors to join us on our incredible journey with Inspired Change with Gunter. If your organisation cares deeply about meaningful conversations around masculinity, self development, and mental health, we'd love to partner with you. Our podcast has a wonderful, dedicated audience committed to personal growth and positive social change. By sponsoring Inspired Change with Gunter, your brand will connect with listeners who truly value thoughtful discussion and support initiatives that promote real transformation. We're incredibly proud to be ranked number one in Australia and number 5 in the USA on FeedSpot's top men's mental health podcasts. For more information on how to become a sponsor, please reach out to Miranda.Sapon, our showrunner and executive producer. We'd love to explore how we can work together to inspire change. Now, thank you for your continued support, and let's keep inspiring change together.
You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter Swoboda. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome back everybody to another episode of Inspired Change with Gunter. This is where I explore the challenges and opportunities of redefining masculinity in a world shaped by patriarchal norms. In today's episode, I'm going to tackle a fundamental issue, and that is the burden of the breadwinner culture. I'm going to explore how history has shaped this expectations, how it impacts on men and their families today, and what we can do to break free from its limitations. For generations, men have been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to financial success, career achievements, and their ability to provide. However, this expectation varies across socioeconomic groups. While affluent men may feel pressure to maintain status and accumulate wealth, working class men often struggle with job insecurity and economic instability, exacerbating stress and self-doubt. But at what cost? Emotional suppression, mental health struggles, and strained relationships. Let's take a journey through history to understand how we got here and how we can move forward. So let's talk about the historical roots of the breadwinner expectation. To understand why men feel trapped in this role, we need to go back, way back, to the origins of patriarchal economies. In early hunter-gatherer societies, roles were more fluid. Men and women both contributed to survival. But with the rise of agriculture and private property, we saw a shift. Men became landowners, the controller of resources, and by extension, the providers. The Industrial Revolution intensified this shift, forcing men into grueling, often dehumanizing work conditions while separating them from their families for long hours. This drastic change weakened familial bonds, increased emotional suppression, and made financial success the sole marker of masculine identity. Men left their homes to work in factories and in offices, while women were relegated to the domestic sphere. The idea of the breadwinner became cemented as that of the male identity. Success was no longer about survival. It was about financial dominance. and with it came pressure, stress, and a new kind of isolation. By the mid-20th century, Western societies doubled down on this model, though its adoption varied across cultures. While some regions fully embraced the single breadwinner ideal, others maintained a more communal or dual income structure, highlighting the cultural flexibility of family roles. The ideal family had a hard-working father, a stay-at-home mother, and children who benefited from this labour. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Men who lost jobs during economic downturns struggled with their identity. Women who wanted to work faced backlash. The breadwinner culture was not just a role. It was a rigid trap for everyone involved. Now fast forward to today, and we still see the remnants of this outdated model. Many men are raised to believe their value is tied to their ability to provide financially. But what happens when they lose a job, struggle with career stagnation, or feel unfulfilled in their work? Well, the consequences are anxiety, depression, and most importantly, a loss of identity. Studies show that men experience a significant increase in mental health struggles when they face financial instability. Why? Because they've been conditioned to see financial success as their only metric of self-worth. And the shame of failing in this role is often too heavy to bear. Now, before diving into the next layer, let's take a moment to reflect. Financial instability can deeply shake a man's sense of self-worth, making it crucial to understand how these struggles impact relationships and emotional well-being. Now, we know that these lead to anxiety and depression. However, the consequences extend beyond the individual. There's another layer to this. When men see themselves only as providers, they miss out on deeper emotional and relational fulfillment. They become distant partners because they withdraw into themselves. They become absent fathers and emotionally unavailable friends. The breadwinner burden does not just harm men, it fractures families and communities. So how do we redefine success and create a sense of liberation from the breadwinner model? So let me ask you, what about you? Have you ever felt trapped by the weight of providing? What steps do you think we can take individually and collectively to break free from this cultural script and redefine success on our own terms? So, the first part of this is fundamentally that we need to expand definitions of masculinity. We need to shift from seeing men as just providers to seeing them as nurturers, partners, and collaborators. Emotional intelligence, presence, and relational depth needs to be valued as much as financial contribution. We also need to focus on shared responsibility in relationships. True partnerships are built on mutual support. Whether financial, emotional, or household labour, men and women need to share the load. This shift isn't just about men doing less work. It's about men finding more connection, more emotional fulfillment, and more freedom. Now, given where the planet's going, where the geopolitical forces are pushing us, this is going to be really difficult to do. So, challenging economic structures that perpetuate the breadwinner culture is an absolute must. The burden of the breadwinner culture is one that's being upheld by all the different economic systems that demand overwork and sacrifice. Now, one model that helps is social democracy. It offers a way to balance economic security with individual well-being, ensuring that social structures support men in redefining their roles beyond mere providers. We need to advocate for work-life balance. We need to advocate for mental health resources that are addressing the core issues. One of the things economically that would help is a universal basic income, flexible work arrangements, and policies that allow men to step outside the always grinding narrative. Now, countries such as Sweden and Denmark have successfully implemented strong social welfare policies that provide economic security and flexible work structures. They demonstrate that a balanced approach can lead to healthier work-life integration and reduce stress on men as sole providers. Another thing that actually might be also useful is supporting entrepreneurship and completely alternative work models that can provide men with more fulfilling ways to contribute while maintaining a balanced life. So let's go over what it is that we can actually continue to do in this space. Well, one of the things that comes to forefront in my thinking is that we need to reform educational narratives. Schools should teach young boys that self-worth isn't tied to economic dominance, but rather to personal growth, relationships, and contributions to society. Curricula should include gender studies that challenge rigid male roles and encourage diverse career paths. Yes, as a man, it is okay to become a kindergarten teacher if that's what you want, or a nurse, or whatever female gendered professions we've seen in the past. They're all, a matter for us to just grab hold of and embrace if that is what we want. We also need to get the media to change how they represent stuff. So if we shift away from movies, shows, and advertisements that glorify men as sole financial providers and move towards highlighting men as nurturers, partners, and collaborators. We know from primate studies that even gorillas embrace nurturing when they need to. The silverbacks. They're not just sort of hanging around getting weighted on hand and foot. So the idea would be to celebrate multi-dimensional male role models in popular culture. We also need to grab hold of the workplace and the economic policies that support work-life balance. Things like paid parental leave for fathers, where if we can expand this, we're going to encourage men to engage in early child rearing and normalise shared responsibility at home. Now, one of the main benefits that I see is in how kids grow up. They see both parents together collaborating, cooperating in the home. I'll give you an example. In Nordic countries like Sweden, they have progressive policies where fathers take substantial leave, not just a couple of weeks, and therefore reduce the breadwinner burden. We also can implement flexible work arrangements. Companies should adopt more remote work, job sharing, and reduced hour work weeks to allow men to balance careers with family and personal well-being. In many countries, however, especially the UK and the USA, that's going in the other direction. They're wanting us to work harder, longer, and, work till we're over 70 for a very short retirement. Again, this sort of thinking increases the breadwinner burden. We also need to challenge wage disparities and job expectations. We need to advocate for equal pay so that men aren't pressured to work, in organisations, in corporations, to compensate for wage gaps in heterosexual relationships. We also need to tackle the overtime culture that equates long hours with masculinity and success. We also can move on to looking at changing family dynamics, equal parenting and domestic labour. Let's challenge unequal household labour divisions. Encourage equal distribution of housework and childcare by breaking the stigma around men doing domestic tasks. It actually, in many respects, according to a lot of women, it's quite sexy when we as men do some housework. Now, that's not the only reason to do it, but it might give us a bit more incentive. Now, in that, we actually need to teach boys early that caregiving and housework are not women's work, but human work. In that context, what we're going to be doing is promoting fatherhood. And in order to make that really stick, is we need to get into supporting men's emotional and parental involvement. It wouldn't hurt to have some fatherhood support groups and educational programs that emphasise nurturing roles rather than just financial provision. So what might support that too is expanding counselling services to help men transition into non-breadwinner roles without shame. So we need to really look at tapping into political and social advocacy for economic justice. I think it's really important that we start to embrace the idea of a universal basic income and social safety nets. We need this in order to reduce the shame of a very narrow definition of success. And that leads me to the final point that I want to make, is we really do need to focus on re-evaluating success matrix in our society. We need to shift public policy from GDP growth and individual wealth accumulation to metrics like well-being, mental health, work-life balance, and social contribution. And in those areas, currently, I don't think we're doing very well at all. And it is really time to begin to challenge and tackle that. So, let me come to the conclusion of today's podcast. And naturally, there's a call to action. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to invite you to reflect on your own life. Think about when and how you've ever felt trapped by the pressure to be the provider. What were the sacrifices you've made in the name of this role? More importantly, how can you redefine success in your own terms? It is really truly time for a new narrative. One where men are valued for their emotional presence as much as their paychecks. One where we create space for authenticity, not just achievement. One where we redefine masculinity beyond work and wealth, and instead towards connection and fulfillment. Now, if this episode resonated with you, I want to encourage you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Join the conversation. Now, most of us in our society do feel trapped by the golden handcuffs. I understand that. But it's got to start somewhere. Someone's got to take a key and try to fit it into those handcuffs and see whether they can unlock it. How about joining conversation on social media platforms, whether that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or in dedicated online forums where you can continue to explore these important discussions. So let's continue this conversation. Follow us, leave a review. Join me next time as we break down another aspect of masculinity and social change. Until then, stay present, stay engaged, and remember, you're more than what you earn. This is me, signing off.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com.